This is how the drive shaft is going to look when it's inside the car. This is the wheel carrier. You would have the strut obviously in here, and that would be connected to the frame of the car underneath the boot lid. On the outside here, there's a whopping great big nut which you need to remove, and then you can just push this out. It's not an interference fit, but after a while it'll be stuck in there a little bit. But after removing it once, that just pushes straight out like that. When installed in the car, you're not just going to be able to push it out because it just can't compress enough. So what you'll need to do is disconnect the ball joint there at the rear trailing arm, or the wishbone, whatever you want to call it. The tow control arm here, you'll have to pop that ball joint there, and that allows this then to rock out and move. Also, I would suggest loosening all these screws off here. The innermost one, just remove it, and the outer two, just loosen them off a bunch, because what we want to be able to do is just rock this out, because then that'll allow this thing to come out and come free. On the inner side, connected to the output flanges of the transmission, you're going to have 6 bolts that look like that, M10 triple square. They take 80 Newton meters to hold this, because obviously it wants to turn when you're trying to loosen it. Make sure your car is in park, and then just go and shove a screwdriver in the rotor of the brakes on the other side, and that'll just jam everything up, so then you can easily remove those. And once those bolts come out, there's your drive shaft. They can easily be removed. With the CV joints themselves, these rarely fail all by themselves. The reason they do fail though is when the boot's split, the grease comes out, water, dirt and everything gets inside, and then everything gets destroyed. So if you do see that you have these split, you see leaks, etc., then fix it up as soon as you can, because they will last forever if you do that. With the axle itself, if you've got leaks out of the CV joints at each end, normally coming out of the seals in here and here, it's pretty obvious where the leaks are coming from, because you get this quite distinct line of this dark grey grease. That's what is inside these things. The way this is constructed is that this end, which is the transmission end, is able to be pulled apart. This end isn't, because this is all crimped together. And this bit here, because you've got the bolts squeezing everything together, you can have all these bits with a bit of sealant inside, and they clamp it all together and it remains sealed. So if we need to replace this boot here, you can still do that by removing all of this end and then pulling it off this way after removing these clips. So the way you pull apart this end, and I'm not going to pull apart this CV joint because it's a perfectly good axle, but they are pretty simple, to be honest. You can Google up how to pull apart these things, but for these, to disassemble this CV joint, you've got a cap on the back here, a cap on the front. And so what you're going to do is just get a smooth screwdriver like this and a mallet, and just go around the edge and tap this one off this way. It'll just fall straight off. There'll be some sealant on the inside, which will just come loose. The same with this one here, except we're going to push that way, and then after removing these clips, we can just push the whole boot and everything up onto the shaft. And then in the middle here, you'll end up with the CV joint itself. The CV joint is just a round thing with a cage and a bunch of big ball bearings inside and a spline shaft in the middle. And to remove that, it's pretty simple. On the end here, there'll be a circlip. You just take that circlip off, and then you might need to use a puller tool to pull the CV joint off the end of the shaft, and you'll be left just with the drive shaft with the spline shaft on the end of it. When you pull off the CV joint, don't start twisting it around, because if the big ball bearings fall out, sometimes they can be really hard to get back in again. You may consider cleaning that up, putting new grease in it, etc. prior to install. And the orientation of the CV joint might be important, so make sure you note which side is outside and which side is inside. There's normally some markings which tell you that. And then once that CV joint is off, we can obviously pull off this boot here, the boot at the other end if required as well. When you are installing this, obviously you'll put the boot here, slide it over the drive shaft, put the CV joint on, press it on, put the circlip on. And then prior to pressing everything back together and putting this cap on the back, you'll just need to put some sealant around it. And so what you want to do is go around so it sort of follows a path like that, because that's what's going to press against the the CV joint itself, and you want to put that on the inside of this cap as well as that cap. And then when you bolt everything back together again, and normally what I do is when you put all this back together, I'm not going to put it in the car straight away. I'm just going to use those bolts that I had in there, put some nuts on it and squeeze it together, let everything seal together, and then I'm going to go and put it in the car later on.